So because I bought the OnePlus 12, I obviously need to buy the wireless charger to test the charging speeds. It took me a little bit to test that out and get a feel for it. And because I'm a fan of wireless charging, I was super excited about the wireless charging speeds that were promised with this charger. Which until recently, the max I was able to charge wirelessly was 15 watts, and that's not exactly blazing fast. So here are my thoughts on the OnePlus wireless charger. Firstly, I want to talk about the design. From most angles, it looks like every other charger. There's nothing too drastically different about it, which is a good thing. But if you look closely, you'll see that some sections are a little bit thicker than the standard chargers, and that's most likely going to be for the air circulation that it needs. Most of that thickness is going to be located in the bottom, in the base section where the fan is located, and from there it gets to push the air upward towards the back of the phone. The charger also has both left and right edges raised, which I've noticed has two benefits. The first benefit is that it mostly negates the large camera bumps that the OnePlus phones have. And as far as the other brands that have smaller camera bumps, it pretty much completely negates the camera bump and it lets it sit flush on the charger. The second reason for the raised edges, I imagine, would be for the airflow. If you look downward, you'll see the large slit where the air will come out of, and the raised edge is going to provide that small gap that's needed for the air to go in there and keep the phone cool. From what I've experienced with the OnePlus 12 on the OnePlus charger and pretty much every other phone, including the OnePlus 12 on standard chargers, that gap with the airflow really does make a difference. To provide some sort of comparison on how it's performing at 50 watts of wireless charging, it's comparable to the Samsung wireless charger that I have that also has airflow in it, but only charges at 15 watts max. So that kind of takes care of one of my biggest fears of the phone just getting super hot while charging. I was actually surprised that even with the 50 watt charging, the phone stayed pretty much as cool as the Samsung charger with the fan, and it stayed cooler than the regular chargers without fans, even though those charge at slower speeds. Now, the fan does make some noise, as would be expected, but to kind of fix that, at least when you're trying to go to sleep, they have a quiet mode on the charger. Basically, it learns your sleeping or usage patterns and adjusts the quiet mode based on that. But even then, it has like a default setting of quiet mode for pretty much when people usually go to sleep. So what the quiet mode does is that it lowers the charging speed to maximum of 15 watts, and because it's charging slower, it's also able to reduce the fan speeds. So therefore, it makes it quiet. And by default, it's pretty much going to be on quiet mode with any other phone that maxes out at 15 watts charging anyway, because that's the setting for the quiet mode. So the only time that really does matter is when using a OnePlus phone that's able to charge at 50 watts. Moving on to the build quality, I gotta say it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow on this one. When it comes to the OEM chargers, like for Samsung and Google, they tend to be like really high quality and you can kind of feel it when you're grabbing it, and the materials just feel a little bit different. The OnePlus charger feels like it has like that cheap plastic, and when you tap it in certain sections, it kind of has that cheap plastic sound. As you get to the bottom of it, it's a bit more dense, probably because of all the components that are in the bottom, so it doesn't sound as cheap. However, an analogy that comes to mind is comparing a sports car to a luxury car. That's kind of what this is. The Google and Samsung chargers are kind of like the luxury cars, where they're gonna have nicer builds, but they're not gonna be as fast. They're not gonna perform as well. But with the OnePlus charger, it's kind of like if you're getting a super light sports car, they're gonna use super cheap and light materials to make it as light and useful as possible, and also cheaper. But they're also gonna have the big engines and they're gonna move faster generally, and that's kind of what this kind of feels like. So I was able to get this charger for $50, and at first I thought $50 seemed kind of high, but I started digging a little bit deeper into the prices of the various chargers out there on Amazon, and 50 is not too far out of the range. The type of chargers that I saw near the $50 mark were some of the nicer third-party chargers, but they all maxed out at 15 watts charging anyway. But yeah, so the price is on the competitive side, maybe on the higher end of the competitive side, but when you take into account the charging speeds, it is in line with what I would expect it to be. And if it was limited to only working with OnePlus phones, it will make it an even harder sell. But the fact that it works with any device that can charge wirelessly and it's pretty much going to max it out is not a bad deal. But yeah, if you're going to spend anywhere near that price for a wireless charger, this one might be worth looking into. There is one thing that I would like to note because I was pretty surprised that it didn't come included, and that was a charging brick. Especially when you're considering that this thing charges at 50 watts and not every charging brick out there has 50 watt support, which means you're gonna have to find one that actually does support these speeds. I'm surprised it didn't come included with the charger. And also the fact that they still included with their phones, why wouldn't they include it with a charger? Doesn't really make sense to me. But luckily I was able to use the charging block that came with the OnePlus Open, and that charges at 80 watts and this is only 50, so it definitely has the enough power to run it. If you bought the OnePlus 12 and you mostly do wireless charging, you can use the same brick anyway, and worst case scenario, you just unplug it from the back if you want to do wired charging and plug it into the phone. So they're both USB-C anyway. So yeah, that was an odd one, but it's something that could be solved by having owned the OnePlus recently. If you have any other ideas of accessories that might be really good, let me know and we'll look into testing them out as well. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.